In this video, we're going to rationalize the denominator of a number. In this particular example, our denominator has 5 plus the square root of 6. If we only had the square root of 6 in our denominator, we'd be able to use the unit fraction, which has the square root of 6 over the square root of 6, to rationalize that denominator. This one's different though. Note that the square root of 6 over the square root of 6 won't work. And to briefly look at why, we could take 5 plus the square root of 6 and multiply that. I'll multiply it on the right by the square root of 6. And when I distribute that, I'll get 5 times the square root of 6 plus the square root of 6 times the square root of 6. That second term is fine. It just becomes 6, but the first term remains 5 times the square root of 6. So I have 5 times the square root of 6 plus 6, and that's not rational. So what we're going to do is there's a special technique. Instead, we will multiply by the unit fraction, which has 5 minus the square root of 6 over 5 minus the square root of 6. Now, where this came from is note that originally we had 5 plus the square root of 6, and so now we're going to use 5 minus the square root of 6. That's going to be what will help our denominator. It's going to come from the difference of two squares. So we know that as a plus b times a minus b is a squared minus b squared. That's the trick we're going to use. So let's work this out. We'll use that unit fraction to rationalize this denominator. So we'll start with 4 over this 5 plus the square root of 6, and that'll become 4 over 5 plus the square root of 6. And now I'll multiply by that unit fraction, which is 5 minus the square root of 6 over 5 minus the square root of 6. Now I'll multiply those numerators and denominators. So I'll have 4 times the quantity 5 minus the square root of 6. That's all in my numerator. And in my denominator, I'm going to have 5 plus the square root of 6 times the quantity 5 minus the square root of 6. Now, what's going to happen, this numerator, I'll distribute that 4, and that will stay as is. So 4 times 5 will give me 20. I'll have 20 minus 4 times the square root of 6. That's going to stay as is. It's fully simplified, and there's not anything I can do to get that radical out of the numerator. That'll just have to stay. But in the denominator, if I go about foiling this, my first term I'll have 5 times 5, which is 25. So I've got 5 squared, plus the outside, so negative, so I'll have 5 and then negative root 6, so minus 5 root 6. Inside I have plus 5 root 6, and those cancel. And that's this difference of two squares property that I was referring to, where a plus b times quantity a minus b is just a squared minus b squared. So the first term stays, the two middle terms cancel, and then I will subtract. So I have my last term, I have the square root of 6 and negative square root of 6. So I'll have minus root 6 times root 6, or root 6 squared. Okay, and so that is going to be a rational number. So my numerator is 20 minus 4 times the square root of 6. Denominator, I have 25 minus 6. As a last step, I can turn that denominator into 19. So I have 20 minus 4 times the square root of 6 in that numerator. My denominator is 19. And that expression has a rational denominator and is fully simplified.